Hey, hello. How are you doing today? Thank you for joining another video of Coding with Tapas. So today in this video, we are going to discuss about JavaScript objects. Not exactly like how the job object is created and how it is being used kind of thing, but a special topic called JavaScript Object Immutability. The term immutability could be a confusing term to many beginners, just like how it was to me. So we are going to understand that, the usage of it, and why exactly we need to learn about it. We'll be doing a lot of hands-on coding so that you can follow along with me while watching this video and practice those. Before we get started, one small request as usual. Please subscribe to this channel so that you get updates about my upcoming videos. You can also request for a new video and I'll try my best to make it. To request a new video, please follow the link in the description of this particular video. So without wasting any further time, let us just get started with hands-on coding. I'll be using Visual Studio Code as a code editor. You feel free to use any of the code editor of your choice, right? So, first thing to understand what exactly immutability means or mutability means. The term mutable or the mutability, it means that you are able to change something. You will be able to change something over the period of time. While the term immutability means that you won't be able to change the thing. So over the time, if something is changing, it is mutable. Over the time, something is not at all changing, it's called immutable. So object immutability means you won't be able to change certain things in an object because it is immutable. So we can make the object immutable to solve certain use cases in hand. So we are going to discuss this. All right, so we'll go ahead and first create our project. To do that, let us just create a new HTML file so that we can actually run the script using this file, and we'll also create index.js file. All right, so both the files are here, and then let us add some minimalistic code. For index.html file, we'll be adding some minimalistic code. Okay, so we'll add this portion of the code. It's a very minimalistic HTML, and let's add like JavaScript Object Immutability, and most of the code that we'll be writing will be printed into the browser console. So just add a simple h1 saying that all the code output is in the console. Next thing to do is let's import the script. So let's import index.js file over here. So that's all is our HTML. Let's add a simple console.log in the index.js JS file so that we understand that things are working file. Console.log. We will learn about object mutability and immutability. Fair enough. So we are done. So now the next thing that we're going to do is this particular index.html file. Let's run it with live server, right? So open with live server. So live server is a plugin that comes with Visual Studio Code, which will allow you to, run your HTML files, from an inbuilt server. So I'm able to run this. I'm able to see that all the code output is in the console. Now let me go and open the console using F12. I see the console coming here, and it also printed our console.log. So it means that our HTML and JavaScript things are in sync and they're working quite well. So the next thing that we are going to do now is start writing our code for object immutability. Now, just to make the things a little bit better, let me just take these things away from here and put these things side by side so that as and when I change the code, you will be able to see it. Yeah. And also this left side portion, I don't need at all. So I'll just get rid of it. All right. So we'll go to index.js, and the first thing first, what we're going to do is like we're going to create an object, right? So that we can actually understand what is mutable, what is immutable about it. So to create an object, what we can do is like let's create a user object. So you'll create a variable called user. Um, let's create with a keyword called const. The keyword const stands for the fact that once you create a variable using the const keyword and assign a value, you cannot reassign another value to the same variable, right? So that's why the constant. Hopefully, we won't be reassigning any value to this user variable again. However, the object that you assign to this variable, you can change the properties of that object. So assigning a property, assigning a new property, or adding a new property, or modifying a property of an object, or deleting a property of an object doesn't mean that you're reassigning a new value to this particular variable. Those two things are completely different, right? So you can always do like const user equals to create an object. To create an object, what you do is basically you do a curly braces, and then next thing that you will be doing is like you'll be start adding your properties. So to add the properties, you can do like name. Let's add some name like John. Maybe John is fine. And then let's do age. Let's add few more properties like maybe a country. So country, let's say US. And then let's do is married. Yeah, false. I think this is fine. This is fair enough. Enough for us to get started. So if you see, user is an object. It has four properties now. Each of the property is a key value pair. The key is this one, value is this one. Key value is separated by a colon. Key should be always a string. The value can be of any allowed JavaScript type, like a string. It can be like a number. It can be a boolean, anything as such. So this is our very bare minimal object. Now, when we call this object mutable, because we will be able to change certain things in this object. So it means I can go ahead and add a new properties altogether called address to it, and say that the address is, let's say, 123 Main Street, right? And if I do console dot log of this particular user, what I will see is like the moment I save and see the things getting changed over here, I will see the user object gets printed, and in this new user object, I see this new property got added. Not only that, what I'll be able to do further is like I can do like user, the name of this particular user, I can change to John Doe, right? So if I just try to print it again, and I'll see like John is probably changed to John Doe. Yep. So that happened, and maybe I'm not. I don't. I'm not interested in the is married attribute. So what I can do here is like I can do delete user of is married, right? So I can do this. So now if I print this console.log user, if this guy refreshes out, I will see that new print for this console.log would not have this particular property, the isMarried property at all. So let's see that. Yeah, it doesn't have that. So it means that I am able to mutate this particular object. Mutate means I am able to change this particular object. Now, another thing that we can do is like we can extend this object. So one way of extending this object is that this is exactly how I did. I have added a property. But another few ways that you can extend an object, for example, you can use the method called object.define property. So object.define property is a method where you will be able to add a new property with lot of configuration attributes of that property, and it is very normal thing to do, right? So first let's see whether our object is extensible or not. If the object is extensible, means we will be able to add properties to it, then we'll go ahead and try like object dot define property and try to add a property to it. So let's do that. So we'll go ahead and do like object dot is extensible, and then we'll pass our object user, right? So what we'll see here, if I just do a console dot log of this guy, and once it refreshes, we'll see like this particular output will be true, because this particular object is extensible. So all the objects that we are creating here are extensible by default in nature, right? They won't be extensible when we make them immutable. That is we're going to do in couple of minutes. So before that, let's go ahead, as this is extensible, so you can always do like object dot define property. So to define a property, what you need to do is like, first you need to call this object, pass this object, and then the new property, let's see, is admin, you know and then you pass a bunch of configuration parameters, and that's all. So the configuration parameters are like, whether this is writable, uh, it means you will be able to kind of edit it. It is enumerable. If you make enumerable false, you cannot enumerate through this particular object to get its properties and the values. So enumerable. So let's do with this. We are done with this. Now after this, we will be printing this user object once more. So at this point of time, what we are expecting to see, there is a new property that gets added called isAdmin, and that property isAdmin would have this values, which you won't be able to see here, but yeah, later point of time you will be able to see. Is just, if you see that this is undefined, it's just because we have not added a value to it. So let's add a value to it. So value, let's say false. So now if it refreshes, we'll see isAdmin along with a new value called false. So we see like by default objects are extensible. We are able to extend the objects. So the next thing that we would be doing is like how we make object immutable. So in JavaScript, there are three different ways you can make an object immutable. The first way is called preventExtensions. So you can do like object immutability three ways you can do. So first way is prevent extensions. Second way is using the seal method, and the third way, I think my copilot is already filling it up, called using freeze method. So let me switch it off. I kind of don't like its interference. Okay, so my pilot is off now. So using the freeze method. So these are the three ways that you can actually make an object immutable, and each of these having a completely three different use cases, right? We'll understand those use cases now. So let's first see the prevent extension. In the prevent extension case, how do you do it is like a simple method call. So prevent extension, to do this you have to do object dot prevent extension of user. So now we are saying that we don't want this particular object to be extended. That means you should not be able to create and add a new property to this object. Have you seen some time back we have done this, where the object is extensible and we got a true over here? Let's go and try this guy out again right after this. And what we are expecting to get is like we are preventing this extension. So it means this particular object is no more going to be extendable. So it means that it is going to print a false now. As you see, it's printing a false. So now what we are going to do after this, we are going to add a new property to this object. See like whether we'll be able to add a new property to this object. So we'll go ahead and do user phone and just add a phone number to this guy, right? And just to, let's print this user, console.log user. Let's see what happens. So what we have done, we have tried adding a new property called phone to this particular user object, and this is the printed user object. So once we see the value of it, we see that the phone value has not got added. So it means this particular object is not at all extensible. Okay, we have stopped that. However, the prevent extension, though it says that it is not allowing you to add a new property, but the fact is it doesn't stop you from editing one or deleting one, right? So a prevent extension means you cannot create a new property to an object. However, you are allowed to update an existing property or delete an existing property. You can do that actually right away. So let's go ahead and change the name of this particular user to say Jill, right? And save this. So once this user gets printed next time, we will see that the phone is not got added, but the name of this particular user, which was John or John Doe before, is going to change to Jill. Not only that, what you can also do, you can do delete user of is admin is something that we have added, right? So you can also delete this property. So now if the user object gets printed, it won't have this user, is admin property. The name has changed to Jill. However, the phone is not got added. So let's see that. Yeah. So name has changed to Jill. Is admin is no more. We still see is admin really. Just let me check this out. All right. So isAdmin we have added as a writable property as defined property, so you won't be able to delete it when this prevent extension happen. However, any other properties that we have added before, we should be able to delete it. For example, let's try country. So if we do country and let it get refreshed, once it get refreshed, we should be able to see this country is also got removed from here. So just give it a seconds to come back. Yeah, and if we expand this, we don't see country, right? So prevent extension is one way where you should be able to prevent the extension. For example, you won't be able to create a new property. If a writable property is created using object defined property, you won't be able to delete that. However, its existing properties you should be able to delete, you should be able to modify. So that's what its object dot prevent extension is. The next thing that we are going to learn or we are going to see is the our second method is called sil method. So what we'll do is like we'll be doing our sil method. Now in the sil method is similar to object dot prevent extension. When we use a sil method, in that case you cannot create or delete a property of an object. However, you are allowed to update the existing property, right? So the prevent extension creation was not allowed, but you were able to delete and update. With sil method, your create and delete is not at all allowed. However, you will be able to do an update, right? So that's the difference, right? So both of these methods are giving some amount of immutability, but it is not a full immutability. So quickly, let's see this one how it works. So we have object dot sil, and if you do user, so this particular user object is sealed now. So it means if I just do uh, delete of user name, we're expecting the name not to get deleted, so it won't be deleted. Then what we can do next thing is like we add one more property called user dot user, let's say email, and let's add a email ID, right? Something like that. And then finally what we can do is like we'll try to update one of the existing property. So user, let's take age, and then add the age, say 32, right? So these are the three changes we have done, and then finally what we're going to do is we are going to print this user object over here, right? So please remember the changes. We have sealed the object, so we are expecting the creation of a new property like this email, which was not there, or the deletion of an existing property. This name is not supposed to happen. Only thing is going to happen is that this age is going to change to 32 because updation is allowed. So let's see our object. So what we see is like name Jill, is there, is admin false is there, age is 32, is got changed, address is got changed, right? Email has not got added at all, and name has not got deleted because name is still there. So we see like what still method does. Now, both prevent extension and still is not giving full immutability. That's why we have our next method called freeze method. So what freeze method does is like with freeze, it is not at all allowed to do even creation of a property, updation of an existing property, or deletion of an existing property. So to freeze an object, what you can do is object dot freeze, and then you pass the user object. Basically this object is frozen now. By the way, both freeze and seal returns as a sealed and the frozen object respectively. That particular object is same as whatever the object that we are passing, after it's getting frozen. So if you see like, if you can do like frozen object equals to this, and after that if you do console dot log frozen object equals to object, you should expect a true, because this particular guy and this particular guy is same. So it means that if I'm trying to do anything on this, it is exactly same as, sorry, not object, is user. So this should be true, right? So it is true. All right. So let us try to do exactly the same thing, right? Whatever we have done with the seal method, but this time what we are going to do, we are going to do with the frozen method. So we will change this 32 to 42. We are trying to delete a name. We are trying to email address we have tried to add, and then age is something that we have tried to change. So for seal method it worked out, the age changed, but if you see now, age has not changed, name is not deleted, and email has not got added. So basically the object is completely frozen, is completely immutable. So you can do like object dot is frozen and pass any object to check whether this particular object is frozen or not. So in this case, it is going to print true because this particular object is frozen already by us, right? So this is a method to again bring immutability into picture. One thing to remember over here, though we are talking about the immutability over here with the freeze method, and which is the most effective method, the freeze method's immutability works for only the first level of properties. So it means if you have a nested object, it is not going to work on the nested object property values, right? So you may introduce a bug unknowingly into your code in case you are not taking care of this particular thing. So to do this, let us kind of take one nested object, and what we'll do is like we will try to freeze that object and try to change some properties of it, right? So let's take one object called a configuration object, which I already have. I'm going to paste it over here. So if you see this particular object, what it exactly does is like, it has a bunch of key value pairs, but interesting fact is this one. It has one property called admin whose value is another object, basically a nested object. So it has again a key value pair. Now, if I freeze this config, it is going to freeze only the first level proper key value pair. It is not going to get down to the next level like this name and rights and going to freeze this, or not going to make them immutable, right? So let's go ahead and freeze this guy, object.freeze, and we'll do a config. So the config is frozen now. Great. Now what we're going to do is like, config of db. If we do try to change the db to, let's say, postgre, from postgre we'll change it to oracle, right? A new db. This won't be possible because we know that we have frozen the object. The property value change is no more allowed, but it has a nested object. So let's try to change that. So for example, config of admin, we take this particular thing, and then after taking this admin, what we're going to change is like we'll be changing the name. Let's use the dot notation, that is far more easy here. Config dot admin dot name, and what we're going to do is like in this case, let's give the name as Alex. All right, and do a console.log of config and try to print this guy out. So what is our expectation again? We have frozen the object. First level properties are frozen, so their values cannot be changed. So it means that this DB, Oracle, whatever we are doing, that value won't be changed. It will remain in PostgreSQL. However, this name will be changed because it is a nested object properties and it should be Alex. So we'll just expand this one. We'll see DB has not changed. If I go and expand admin, we'll see that name has changed to Alex. So it means that this guy is not going to work out, right, for a nested object. So for that, then, but you may have a use case really to freeze this object, whatever the depth that object, irrespective of the depth that object has, basically nested object freezing. So for that, you have to do a bit of programming to make sure that it happens. In programming languages, it's called deep freeze. So we are going to kind of do this deep freeze right now. So what we'll be doing for that, we'll be using recursion. Recursion in programming is a methodology where a particular function or a routine is basically call itself to get to a particular conclusion or the outcome, right? So we'll be cross calling this freeze method to each of these properties nested down, try to freeze this object completely. So how do you write a deep freeze method? So to say deep freeze. So what we'll do is like we'll be, let's create a method called defreeze. Of course, it takes the object, and what it's going to do is like it is going to iterate. So object dot keys in each of these keys, and we'll be passing this object. So if I pass the user object, it is going to iterate over, because it's an enumerable object, it's going to pick up property one by one like db, host, password, etc. Once this is done, what is going to do is going to do this iteration. So for each of the keys, right? So for each of these keys, what I'm going to do, I'm going to see like if the type of my objects, this value for this particular key is an object, in that case, I am going to call this defreeze method once again, right, with object.key, right? So let's see if I have done my bracket closing correctly. I'm kind of little bad at that without the help of a particular data. So if I'm done it here, I have done it here, and then there will be one more bracket here. So you're done. So I have a defreeze method where I'm kind of iterating through all the keys. For each of the keys, I'm taking out the value over here, and then after taking out the value, I'm checking that the type of that value is an object or not. If the type of a value is an object, means it's a nested objects. Let's go ahead and defreeze again. So it is again going to call, and that's how it is kind of traverse through all those values which are object nested down, and that's what it's going to do, right? And finally, what is going to do, the final thing that what we have to do is like we'll be doing a object dot freeze of obj, right? So that's all this particular defreeze method is going to do. Now if you do like defreeze of, let's say, our config, right? So what is going to happen is like the config object is going to get passed here. It is going object.keys is going to return an array of all the properties. We are going over each of these properties, getting the key, getting the value of it, checking whether it's a type of object or not. If it is a type of object, then we are going to go ahead and going to do a defreeze. We are going to kind of keep iterating this again and again and again. And then what we are doing also doing in this method is like we're calling object.freeze, so that the object gets basically done, right? The frozen. So after this, what we'll be doing is like same to code. We're trying to copy it from here, and we'll be pasting over here and try to see like what kind of changes that it has. So in this case, if you see, uh, right, okay, this is the previous case that we are seeing. Yeah, so last time we have already changed the name to Alex, so let's try to change it to Alex123 this time and try to save it so that once it printed out, this Alex123 is not going to change anymore to Alex123. It is remain to be Alex because we have now frozen this object, nested down to any length possible, right? So we're just waiting for this output to happen. All right, so the output is here. So we see like the name is remaining Alex because we have changed the name over here. That time it was allowed because nested down was not happening. Now we have written a defreeze method, and along with that, it is defrozen, so it's no more possible to change this one, you know, anytime. So that's kind of pretty much it about how the immutability can be achieved in various cases. Now the last question that comes into mind is basically why do we need to defreeze, right? What is the reason that we need to defreeze? I think the various reasons for that. One of the primary reason would be you might not want certain configuration to change throughout the course of your program. So you want those configurations to be as intact as possible. It could be supported locales in your application because those supported locales you may not want to change programmatically. A certain DB configuration that you don't want to change programmatically. So wherever you have a need that you don't want your object to change programmatically, you are going to use immutability. You make this object immutable, and then you can pass it across different functions or different objects. It is not there is no side effect is going to change that object for you, right? So one final thing I want to show before I end this video. I think you're going to like that. So as objects are mutable and we can make them immutable, you know what, we can actually make arrays also immutable, right? So let's see that once quickly. In JavaScript, uh, objects, arrays are nothing but objects at the background, so the same things kind of apply to them. So what we're going to do now, we are going to quickly do this stuff, like we'll be creating an object. So let's go ahead and create an object const, let's say, let's create an array. We'll create an array of say 4 elements. So this array has got created. Now what we're going to do is like we're going to freeze this array. So if you don't freeze an array, how do you add a new method to this array? It's kind of you do a array dot push and you add probably 5 over here. Or if you want to kind of delete, there are various ways you can delete. You can, the easiest option, probably do a pop. Or if you want to kind of wipe out the entire array elements and just kind of make it like an empty array, you can do array dot length equals to 0. So that will make that array as an empty array. So there are various array operations you should be able to do. But in this particular case, what we are going to do here is like we are going to make this guy as a frozen array. So for that we can do like object dot freeze of an array. So if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to run that. So what I'm freezing that array, and after freezing that array, I'm trying to push something, and I'm trying to pop something, and I'm going to do something with this length. You see that error clearly that I cannot add a property at the property at the 4. Why 4? Because this index starts with 0, 1, 2, 3. The fifth one would have been the fourth index. At 4, object is not extensible because it is frozen. So in case if you want to kind of freeze an array, you don't want that to change at all. You want to make sure that it is not extensible anymore, just like your objects. Same thing you can do, right? So with this, today's video comes to an end. Hope you learn about object immutability, certain use cases, how to do them, and the various ways of doing them. I would go for freeze over CIL and other available methods, because if I want a full-fledged immutability, but based on your use case, you might want to go for CIL or prevent extension, because if you just want that object to be partially immutable. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please like, share, or comment. I will come back soon with my new video. Until then, please take a very good care of yourself. Thank you very much. Bye.